Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Tony Dudzik, Pick Guardian.
Jared Brandon Wound Pickups.
Hey, this is Todd Novak. We are super excited that you are listening to our show, the Guitar Knobs podcast. And gentlemen, what do we do on the show? Anybody?
We talk about cool boutique things, and we talk to the unique builders that build the cool boutique things, like pickups and pedals and guitars and
amps and all kinds
things.
of stuff. Yeah,
Wires.
That's a very good summation of what we do. Any of you who are listening for the very first time, we have quite a backlog of fantastic interviews with the builders that you know and love, and probably a lot that you don't know but will love. And so that's a lot of interviews, people. So go to theguitarknobs.com to check out all those interviews and listen to us on Spotify, on iTunes, wherever you like. We'd also like to give a big, ginormous shout out to Tony.
Road
microphones. We're operating our Rodecaster Pro. And then but we also have these fantastic Rode microphones that they provide us with. So they're taking really good care of us. Please check them out. Rode microphones. We are very grateful for their help. Gentlemen, I'm pretty sure we have somebody extremely special on the line. Like, this is a big one. All right?
Oh, how you doing? Yeah, I'm Rick Kelly. I build guitars here at Carmine St Guitars. We make musical instruments, mostly electric guitars out of reclaimed New York City timbers.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
This is one we've been really looking forward to. I was thrilled to get the information that we were going to be able to have you on the show. It's going to be very exciting. We're going to learn a lot about your history as a luthier and your shop, a historic shop, and all of the lore that is surrounding that. First, we're going to just check in with ourselves and find out what have we been doing in our guitar worlds this week. Tony.
Let's see. Well, this week, I think last time we talked about some very special Rogan knobs that I'd ordered on eBay, and they finally came in, and they're very cool. They're actually very similar to the ones that Rickenbacker used in the 50s. These are just, but I mean, they're a little slightly different shape, but they're the same size. So I've got a project coming up that is going to be just perfect for these.
Awesome. And Jared, how about you?
The Digitech PDS 1700 pedal that I bought a few weeks ago. Got to experiment with it, play through it, and all that kind of thing. It's everything I wanted it to be and more. It's just a fantastic pedal. It's got lots of buttons, bells and whistles, and I'm really happy with it. So it was just a follow-up.
That's excellent. Yep. I like that. Hey, Rick, how about yourself? Anything new in your guitar world this week?
Not a whole lot. I mean, I just find occasionally I'll get a different tool or a piece of sandpaper I particularly like using, and
that works.
Yeah, that works.
But it doesn't work too well. I'm not too happy with it. I like the old-fashioned stuff.
Yeah. Do you have particular scraps that you grow fond of, or is it a brand thing, or?
Well, it's mostly, I use a lot of scraper. I use an actual scraper that you have to burnish and create the cutting edge on it. Uh-huh. And so I've never been a big fan of sandpaper, but it comes in handy in a lot of places, and sometimes you have to resort to sandpaper.
Gotcha. Well, in my music world this week, I just had to go get a bunch of new strings because I got a gig coming up this Saturday, and it's time. I gotta restring the ladies. Yeah, put some new stockings on the ladies. So that's always a really fun thing for me because I can just kind of zone out down in the basement and just have some time.
So what is your technique, if I can ask?
My technique to restringing?
Yes.
Well,
I'll see if you're doing it right.
Do you have a crank?
Thanks. I do have a crank. Yes. What exactly are you asking?
When you're putting the strings on.
Well, yeah.
Well, let's start. How do you do one? Okay, here's what I like.
All right, here we go.
I like to do one over, and the rest under.
Yes,
the
I
part
do that.
Okay, one over, the rest
Yes.
under. Perfect. You're doing it right.
The only time I don't do that is on my
on a Gibbs or the
on my Fender.
oh yeah, because it's got a
Because
safety post.
it's got the hole.
Yeah, you got to put the thing in the thing.
Got to put the thing in the thing.
Okay, good. I thought I was going to nail you.
Yeah, and I use SIT strings, so they get
Akron, Ohio.
What they do, one thing that I like about what they do is that they've figured out, like, hey, if you take all these strings off and you can actually do the correct, or maybe not correct, but at least build semi-uniform tensions as you're putting them in based on how they package the strings. I mean, that's pretty smart. You know, so they do like 6 and 2, and then 5 and 1 and 3, or I can't remember the numbers, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
On either side,
They use 3 envelopes instead of 6.
Yes.
but I always end up with, I got piles of extra strings because they always put the extra strings.
Oh,
in
that's
there.
right. They do put extras.
That's a lot of content for string changing.
I know. Rick, what do you have a string of choice?
I use all different kinds, probably more D'Addarios than anything, just because they're right here in Farmingdale, right across the river, and they're very fresh.
Nice.
So we use a lot of D'Addario, and I think they make SIT strings, which I like too. I use a lot of SITs and GHS and Rhoda Sounds I just started using recently, but we do probably 1,000 string changes a month here. And it is hilarious to see people when they come in with their guitars and they've actually tried to put the whole string without cutting it at all, and it'll actually break the tuner. I've actually seen everything. You wouldn't believe how many string things you've seen over the years.
I can only imagine. Now, when you tear open a new pack, do you is it like coffee? Do you stick your nose in and go,
fresh strings?
These are made on Tuesday.
yes.
Sealed for freshness.
Yes.
Funny. Cool. Well, that's a quick little wrap up. So let me explain for the listeners here real quick here. Rick has a new movie out, and he's not only a storied luthier, but now he's a big movie star.
Oh my God. 15 minutes of fame.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it is a if you love guitars, it is a glorious hour and some change of fame. So we've got a lot of questions. We want to learn as much as we can about you. We're going to learn a little bit about this film that came out. And just for those who can follow along right now and find out, a little bit more about you, provided you're not driving, which we always say, where can people go to check out your work, Rick?
Oh, well, it's all right here at Carmine St Guitars. We don't make guitars for any other stores, really. Occasionally you'll find a used one on Reverb, or one of the other stores may have one, but it's almost all custom. And usually about a year back ordered. So I try to make 1 or 2 each month for the store and make it available at a slightly higher price. But normally it's about a year wait.
Wow, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
So Carmine St Guitars, and I believe that is at kellyguitars.com. So if you're at your phone or your computer, you want to go over to kellyguitars.com, check out what he is building.
Yeah, we got a lot of Instagram photos too at Carmine St Guitars, and that's pretty much every day we post something that's going on here each day, and some new guitar we just finished.
How about telling us about one that you just finished?
Yeah, we just made one for the producer of the movie, Ron Mann. He's the movie director and originator. And Cindy actually made it for him. And it's made from multiple pieces of wood. Ron has a table in his apartment that's made like butcher block style, sort of, but a little different. And Cindy actually pieced together all these different pieces of pine and made the grains match up, but they're all in different directions. And then I used to make a lot of guitars that had stripes, kind of like an old cutting board, and we use that for the back of it. So it's a really unique guitar, and I hope he's happy with it. But he'll get presented it on Wednesday when we have the film for the first film for him.
Oh man, that's super exciting. So the launch of the film is next Wednesday?
Yeah, Wednesday is it's a sold out premiere, and then I think Saturday is still available, and there's a couple of Q&A days where we do a Q&A after the movie's over.
Where's the premiere going to be?
The Film Forum right here in New York City.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's right around the corner from the shop, actually. So you could always come a little early and check out the shop and go over and see the movie.
So that'll be April 24th. This is going to launch just past that, I think. But even so, people can still go check out the movie. And I'm sure there's going to be listings around the country of where, you can find that. Yeah. So you mentioned Cindy. We're going to find out a little bit more about her. But I want to, for those who are not familiar with this little magic shop of yours, we'd like to get a little bit of a backstory. I don't think we're going to give away anything within the movie. The movie is really, I was telling Tony, we were kind of talking about it, and it felt like a day in the life, just several days in the life.
Yeah. It's based on 5 days and the shop and who comes in and hangs out. And it is kind of that way. The store is really open. And a lot of the guitar players like to come in sometimes just on a lunch break and sit and play something. And there's a lot of guitars that you can just grab and sit and play a little bit. And it's always fun when somebody comes in with their girlfriend and they sing them a love song and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Fine
I get a
moments
kick
of
out of that. Yeah, I get a real kick out of that.
Yeah, until their wife shows up.
Whoops.
Yeah. So that shop's been there an awful long time. When did you first set up?
Well, I was around the corner back in 1975 on Downing Street, which is just around the corner from where I am now. I've been in this shop for about 30 years now. And Carmine St Guitars, 30 years. I just celebrated 50 years of guitar making. I started in 1968.
Wow.
Ooh.
And what exactly was that little tick that you got that made you say, I need to do this thing?
Yes, yeah, it was that first one. I just made a little ukulele in art class in high school, and that was the first one I made. And I just got this thing about it. It made music, and it was something I could make. And I just always wanted to be a sculptor or something that I could make things that would outlive me, and that would be around long after I was gone. And I love the idea of making musical instruments because they fit that bill. They're going to be around for much longer than you'll be alive, and they'll pass on, and they have their own life. After they leave you or Prevere, they go on to live a new life. And it's always been fascinating to me that happens.
I love that sentiment, and even more so when it's a boutique builder, when it's got someone's actual fingerprint on it, who crafted it from top to bottom, and thought about every little detail for someone special. That's the reason why we do the show. We seek those people out, and because we know that stuff's important to us. So you started with the ukulele, and then was it just right into building?
Actually, I was in college in the early 70s, and I was trying to help pay my tuition, which was a private art school. It was pretty expensive. It was down in Baltimore City. It was called Merrill Institute College of Art. And it's, at that time I had very little finances, so it was kind of on my own. A friend of mine from down south, and he came back with an Appalachian dulcimer, and it looked like an instrument I could actually make and sell. So I started making those and during juried craft fairs in the early 70s, and I made my living actually doing that. And then at the same time, I was actually building guitars as well. So I started right away with solid body guitars in about 1970, and that just, always fascinated me. There was Telecaster players down there when I was down in Baltimore that were pretty famous. Penny Callis, Dimitri Callis, his name was. He was, kind of like a Roy Buchanan, who was also down there at the time, and Danny Gatton. They were all famous guitar players from that same area, Washington, D.C. area in Baltimore. And I was really impressed so much with their playing styles that it became the guitar of choice for me. But even as a kid, I used to walk down 48th Street here in New York City when it used to be the guitar block. Would walk me down the block, and I would see all these old 50 Telecasters in the windows with that Blackguard blonde, and it's the look of it just stuck with me forever. And when I started building guitars, that was the one I wanted to make.
That there is something awfully special, even when we go to the guitar shows. If if you see that old Blackguard, oh boy, there's just nothing. It's hard to explain. There just isn't anything like that.
Yeah, it just stays with you.
Were there any major influences early on as far as your, I guess the music styles or builders that were influencing you beyond the Telecaster?
Yeah, I mean, Paul Reed Smith was starting to build right around the same time I did. And he was in Annapolis, Maryland. And I was really impressed with his very first instruments that were made of one big chunk of mahogany. And I don't know how many of those he made. There was probably very few. But I always thought that was a great, idea to incorporate it as one. And then I wound up finding an old Supro, and that was made in a similar fashion, where the neck and half the body were made from the same piece. And then there was a guy named S.D. Curley. I don't know if you've ever been familiar with those guitars.
Yeah, I remember
but,
that.
But he had kind of a half a neck through. It went down 3/4 into the body. By the 80s, there was a lot of neck through guitars, and old Rickenbackers were set necks, and Gibsons had set necks. And there were so many different styles of construction that I was impressed by all of them and always were influenced by them. But there was something about the bolt-on neck Telecaster and the guys who played him. I was a really big Roy Buchanan fan back then. And I remember when Roy came out with his Snake Stretchers album, and he was actually walking the streets of DC and had a burlap cover on them, and he was giving them away, and was actually had a job teaching at the Smithsonian back in the 70s. I was way too young to have this great job of teaching guitar making, but I used to go down with a rented car, and after I'd go into Georgetown and I'd get to see Roy, just from the sidewalk looking in, and the doors were open and I could see him playing. But it was really impressive. Before that, I was actually used to come into the Greenwich Village, and I got to see Jimi Hendrix in 1965 playing at the bitter end. And that was another moving moment for me to see that old rubbery wrist of his. And I couldn't believe how he could get that sound out of that thing playing behind his head. That was another thing that got me, and you just get hooked. You just don't want to do anything else with your life except be a guitar player and a guitar maker.
Now, you started building the guitars that you were coming up with your own shapes and stuff, as well as the Telecaster, which I know is kind of brought up in the movie. But along the way, you kind of landed on something extra special, which is the Bowery wood. Could you tell us a story about that?
Yeah, this wood, I got the first pine from a friend of mine, actually, way back in the when I first opened the shop in the early 90s. I mean, I've always used reclaimed wood for when I was back in art school, even because I just didn't have any money. But then when I, realized that, old instruments sound better for a reason as they get older. And I think it had a lot to do with it at the time of the wood. It also has to do with the vibrations in the wood. But when I first got some pine from a friend of mine from Virginia in a house he grew up in, it was his grandfather made the house, and he had some tables that were made from pine, and he gave me some pieces that were one growth, and they sounded really good. But it wasn't until about 5 years later that Jim Jarmusch, filmmaker, was doing his roof over on the building that he lives on over down on the Bowery, and that wood was the pine that now I use all the time. And it was this old white pine that I found out later that the whole city is actually built from this wood, that all these buildings, are the bones. I call it the bones of old New York because all these old buildings from the 1800s are constructed of this old Pinus strobus. It's a white pine species. And the trees were 300 years old. They were huge. There was nothing here but Indians and trees, and they built all the city out of this wood, and now the wood has been indoors for 170 years. So I said, this stuff is like gold. This is going to be great. And then when I heard the first ones, I actually made the neck out of the same wooded body. It changed everything. When the neck and the body were made from the same wood, and it was this old growth with really tight grain structure, and I cut it on the quarter for the necks, and they were just so stable. But the guitars had this really warm tone because of the wood and the age of the wood, that it was indoors for all this time. A certain kind of alchemy happens when the wood is up near the roof, and hot and cold cycles, it gets over 120 degrees on this. Right. We call it Tar Beach here. Up on the roof is a black tar on all these old buildings, and it just cooks the wood even more. And they're all blackened. They have this beautiful patina on them with this blackened color, which I try to keep in the wood a lot of times. That was actually Lenny Kaye. He ordered a guitar from me, and he wanted it to just look exactly like the patina on the wood. So he was the first one to get one that I kept the patina as much as I could on the wood. But yeah, I can't say enough great things about this wood. It's old growth. It's 60, 70 years, and it's just super resonant. And, it's the same wood they use on soundboards for instruments, musical instruments, for 5,000 years. They've been making instruments with pine and spruce as the tops. Even Stradivarius's violins had pine tops, not spruce.
Really?
Yeah, that was something I learned after reading the Stradivarius book about 10, 20 years ago. I realized it was a species of balsam pine that from Cremona that no longer grows, but that's actually what he used for his tops.
Wow. Well, we learned a little bit about the violin today. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. When I was at your shop 5 or 6 years ago, 3 things that really impressed me. One, the size of your shop I would say is relatively small. Maybe not by New York standards, but by industry standards, it's small. And it's amazing that you can churn out what you do. The second thing was that you knew where every piece of lumber came from. I know you have it marked, but you would say, oh yeah, that one came from here. That one came from that building, blah, blah, blah. And then the third thing was the big box of nails the wire cut nails that you had laying next to your bench. That was really nice.
Yeah, the thing with this wood is it's, that's why we don't worry too much about factories copying this idea. But this wood is filled with cut nails, and, it's just roof rafters and floor joists. So you have to accommodate. And we've got this beautiful old nail puller from the 1800s that I use to pull the nails. But, it's well worth it. The wood is just pretty much like gold to me. It's so special.
I would assume that at this point in time in your career, especially with your reputation, that you probably get quite a few calls where I would assume that it would be almost an honor to be able to provide you with that wood because they know that wood's going to be something really special. Yeah.
The other thing, too, I really enjoy is when people have frequented a certain building that I have wood from and they want their guitar to be made from that wood because they had their honeymoon there or for whatever reason. Bob Dylan actually has a guitar that was wood from Chumley's because he used to hang out at Chumley's, and he wanted to know if the beer that he spilled on the floor was in his guitar. Of course, I said, of course it is.
Of course.
Of course
The
it
answer
is.
is yes.
Yeah. But that was that, and McSorley's too. I've cut, I got it made. The movie actually has me making a guitar from McSorley's. It was always a place because I go there every Sunday at 1:00 and have a couple of beers and leave. And it was always someplace I really wanted to get. It's the oldest bar in New York. It's grandfathered in wood stove that burns all winter long, and sawdust on the floors, and memorabilia all around it. It's just covered in dust, and it reminds me of the shop. Always wanted to build a guitar with wood from that building, and they did a New York Times article about the shop one time, and Pepe, the bartender, that had read the article and actually supplied me with some wood when he found that I wanted to use wood from McSorley. So we incorporated that in the movie.
Nice. And on your construction method, I think it seems to me you do a lot more handwork than a lot of places do.
It just has a lot to do with the size of the shop as well. Like you say, there's most guitar makers today, and even a lot of guys that I know that make guitars are all switching over to computerized tooling, CAD/CAM and CNC. They use CNC for even small CNCs now are becoming smaller and smaller and more affordable for small makers. And I see a lot of advantage in that, but I also see the romantic side that I just love the wood and cutting it by hand. And I love making the necks with a draw knife and spoke shaves and rasps. And you can tailor a neck to a person's hand better that way than you can with a program on a computer. And I think there's still a lot to be said for those little shops in Spain where they build guitars on dirt. They're still like, in a couple of apprentices, a journeyman and the master builder. That was always very romantic to me in a style of building that I always wanted to do.
Cool. What's your take on truss rods? in the necks?
Well, truss rods are necessary in maple. Maple and pine are two different kinds of trees. You know, the maple trees, or even though it's a harder wood, it actually has to be a malleable cellular structure in the wood so the tree can bend to get through the canopy to get to the sunlight. Whereas pine trees are conically shaped and they grow perfectly straight, and that's the way the wood wants to stay. It works perfectly. If you cut that wood on a quarter, and it's like if you piled up a lot of pieces of metal and tried to bend them in one direction, they're very easy, but if you hold them on their edge, you cannot bend them at all. And that's kind of the way quarter sawn leaves a pine neck. It leaves it very straight, and it just wants to stay that way. And what happens when you do that is the D string and the G string seem to come a little more alive, and they became a little more blended with the other strings because there's no channel or a metal rod underneath those two strings like there would be on most guitars that have truss rods. So I found there was definitely an advantage in tone to not using it. And I've, made them with even pretty heavy strings, and I've actually, G.E. Smith has one of my basses that I made them with no truss rod, believe it or not.
Whoa.
That's
amazing,
man.
Yeah, that guitar has been played with Pink Floyd, in the blue, I don't know what they call the tour, Roger Waters tour, I guess. He just brought it to Sag Harbor. We had a premiere of the film out there, a one-day screening, and he brought the bass and the guitar. And they're going on 15 years old now, and that thing has not moved a lick.
That's pretty amazing.
So.
I didn't know that. You described that beautifully, and all I could think about in my head was like a leaf spring from a truck, and how they all flex and bow. But if you did turn them on the side, there's no way you can move. Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly the principle. The leaf spring is a perfect example. Even though it's bent in an arch, if you were to straighten that out and put it on its side, you would never flex it. It would be as stiff as a board. And pine, if you look at the way the grain is, the hard grain in pine, they are actually annual rings. You have the winter and the summer. And the winter, when the tree is dormant, that wood is actually harder than a maple. I've tried to make necks without truss rods in 1950, and he actually has photos of him standing on a neck between two chairs and bouncing up and down and saying, this does not need it. But and I actually have made a couple of necks at maple, quarter sawn, and they've stayed pretty straight, but they just tend to want to bend a little bit because of the malleable nature of the cells in the wood.
Yeah,
that's almost like a samurai sword with the hard and the hard and the soft, the hard and the soft too.
Yeah,
kind of neat. Mm-hmm. So you obviously have a deep connection with the necks, but can you tell us, aside from the actual wood, like the neck? We talk about this a lot on the show. The neck is really the life of the guitar. Tell us a little bit about your take on the neck.
Yeah, I think the neck has way more to do with sound than it's ever been credited for. And the fact that necks kept getting smaller and smaller and skinnier was really a result of three guitar companies going up against each other and making their necks smaller and saying, our necks are faster than your necks. And we kept making them smaller and smaller. And then all these guitar players were getting tendonitis and carpal tunnel, and they're pinching to make chords on the neck. And, we have a couple of hand surgeons here in the city that play guitar, and their prescription for, correcting that is to go to a guitar with a bigger neck. And it actually works. It's a proven thing that bigger necks are actually easier to play because it relaxes your hand. It fills your hand. Instead of you squeezing and pinching and creating tension in your wrist and your elbows, it actually makes, think of classical guitars. They're almost 2 inches wide and a full inch thick. They're really pretty massive. And the guitar design has never changed for 200 years. It's been the same. Those necks are still, and they hold up forever without truss rods. They never have truss rods either. Because they have nylon strings. And I think, guitars like the old Banner J45 is what I used as a model to make my necks. They are now probably the most revered of acoustic guitars. To try to find a Banner J45, you're going to pay top dollar. And during the war era, they didn't have metal to make truss rods. So they were making these big, massive necks on their guitars. And now they're so collectible because they play so well and they sound so great.
And you use that for the electrics too, that profile?
Yeah, well, that was kind of where the idea came with. I have a lot of different profiles. I tend to put a little more shoulder in my necks, and I think a lot of players really kind of prefer that. Once you start playing one of my necks, you're going to wind up selling a lot of your guitars. Because if you get used to these necks, you don't want to go back to those skinny necks. And it happens all the time. I see it happen time and time again where the players will go, oh, I got to get another one of these. I can't play those guitars anymore.
So what is your favorite part of the build process?
Of course, it's always putting the finish on the wood, to see the wood jump alive and the tonal glow of the wood changes color. It's probably still my favorite. That and putting the strings on. There's nothing like hearing the first sound. Each guitar, you just created something from just a roof rafter, and now it's a musical instrument. It's going to live and it's going to have a home with hopefully a really good musician who'll be inspired by it. To me, that's the inspiration I get for continually building them this way. And for that reason, to see people like Bill Frisell play my guitar and make such beautiful sounds coming out of it is just magic.
I wanted to make a comment on something we were discussing earlier. It's the fact that I am also a true believer of the wood that is used to make a guitar totally matters. 'Cause I had a vintage Gibson SG 62, and it haunts me from getting rid of it because it's the best sounding guitar, the electric guitar I've ever played in my life. It resonated for days, and I just dreamt about it the other night. But I wish there was a way we could convey this to the world, because I think there's a lot of players out there, that just don't understand or get that and are missing out.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think I remember when people would come into my store and ask if the guitars were made of plastic, because they had this heavy, shiny finish on them. And when Fender went from nitrocellulose lacquer to urethane, the guitars became more and more plastic looking. And it also, I understand where Leo Fender actually went from pine to ash because he wanted to use car colors in the 1950s. Those old Cadillac and Thunderbird colors were today, there's a lot more idea of going back to different kinds of finishes that are very thin, oil finishes and shellac finishes. And they do make the guitar come more alive. It does have an effect on the tone. And, making guitars, you want to make them sound the best. You don't want to care about the way they look so much.
What is your favorite finish to use, or what's your most common finish, I guess?
Shellac. Yeah, I'm a big shellac fan. I just tried some of the new Royal Lac that Luthier's Mercantile sells, and I like it. Stinks real bad, but I've always just been.
It's what's all those ground up insects.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the old lac bug. Yeah, we had a little problem with the lac bug a few years ago, and I got awful worried, and I was telling one of my friends that works in the hardware store down here about the lac bug and how prices were going to go up on lacquer. And next day he comes in with 4 gallons of lacquer and donated them to the store.
Nice.
That was a funny moment. But yeah, the Royal Lac I just started using. It's very thin. It was really meant for French polishes, and it's pretty nice and it's convenient. But I've actually, used shellac flakes, really good quality shellac flakes, and you dissolve them and yourself, and that's a beautiful finish as well. But I'm still a fan of old Zisner. Good old Zisner. It works pretty well, but it's waxed. It's not de-waxed. It's waxed, and you don't want to put it on a wet day. You have to have a nice dry day to put it on, or it stays kind of sticky.
Rick, in the movie, I think maybe the quote that stuck out for me, and you didn't have a lot of quotes because you're a relatively soft-spoken guy.
Yeah.
But the one that when I heard it really resonated with me, and it says, "The guitar becomes the player." Tell us a little bit about your thought on that.
Yeah, I think when a guitarist really finds a guitar, like we were just talking about before, that you have a certain guitar that really sounds good and you just want to, and it really feels good and it really plays good. I think the player actually will become sort of part of the instrument, and the instrument responds to that. I'm always fascinated with street singers that come in with really cheap guitars and they sound so big and alive, and I contributed to the fact that the vibrations that they play into this instrument every day, they hammer on these guitars, and it does have a molecular effect. I call it the mystery of the molecules, where it actually affects the molecules in the wood. I know there's a little story I always tell about Segovia's Hauser in the Metropolitan Museum of Art here. they actually let the people in the Philharmonic play the guitar because it needs to be vibrating. It needs to stay alive and keep vibrating. And they also say that on it, it's loud and vibrant, but if you tried to say play folk music on it or something, it'll sound sort of dead and unresponsive. And so that is part of that mystery where the instrument does become, the player becomes the instrument. It really does happen. It's magic, and it's kind of indescribable why that happens.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of people say that a guitar that isn't played starts to think it's a piece of furniture.
I love it. That's a great one. Yeah.
Rick, I would imagine that for someone who's putting in as much time as you do for so many years, there's probably a few instances where you are seeing that like literally happen at the moment spontaneously.
You mean when the instrument is finished? What happens spontaneously?
When it's finished and someone picks up like the one and you see that connection happen.
Jamie Hinz from the Kills is, he slammed his hand in a car door, and he really thought he was never going to play guitar again. And he learned to play, and it's funny looking at him playing because his middle finger sticks up while he's playing. But he's actually adapted his playing style, and he had. He was playing this skinny neck guitar that I had made, and he was doing fine on it. And then, he was telling me about his injury. And I said, well, have you ever tried to play a guitar with a bigger neck on it? And so I handed him one that I had just finished, and it was sort of like a semi-hollow Telecaster style. And he played it, and it just came alive in his hands. And I swear he said he wanted to run out the door with that guitar. He didn't want to give it back. So, yeah, that definitely happens, where it's a magic moment where you see somebody just, even in the movie when Charlie Sexton in the end, and he hits a chord and he goes, wow, he didn't expect it to have this overtone in a certain part of the neck that just kind of happened. And it is magic when you see that happen for sure.
Yeah, somebody that plays so dynamic, like the Kills, is like you're not playing like songs. He's playing sounds, which is kind of a different way to think about it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So to have something like resonate and react to what you're doing, not just playing the song is, I think requires, it certainly requires a different type of playing, but certainly obviously a different kind of instrument too.
Yeah, it'll affect your playing. I think the instrument, and as you say, when it becomes a part of you. You see that happen sometimes with old vintage guitars. You'll see somebody will buy a guitar and they'll come in the next day and they'll say, this guitar just taught me 3 new songs that I never knew I could play. And I think that's a magical thing that really does happen. And it's weird, and it seems like that's unfathomable, but I think it actually works. I think that does happen. They do have a spirit, and they live on.
It absolutely does. We have one in our studio. Tony put together, and it's a parts caster kind of a thing, like a jazz body with Telecaster guts and stuff. And he said, "Hey, I made this guitar. Why don't you give it a try?" And I took it home, and no joke, within 5-10 minutes, I had 2 brand new songs, and I said, "Holy moly! I got to have one of these."
And I still haven't seen any of the royalties.
But I went and built one exactly like it. I'm like, I wanted the exact same parts. So now I have one called One-Eyed Vinny, and.
See, you gave it a name even. That's how personal it is.
Yeah. So, you've mentioned quite a few folks that have been in the shop. As long as you have been building for so many great players, there's got to be 1 or 2 that maybe wished that you had the opportunity to build for, but maybe, through time probably don't have that opportunity anymore. Do you have a couple like that?
Yeah, but actually I did wind up building for him. I think Robert Quine, he was one of my best friends, and he used to come to the store every day almost after his wife died. He was really depressed, and he was kind of giving up on music and guitar playing. He had pretty much played, throughout Lou Reed's Blue Mask era, and he played with the Voidoids, who's one of the first Void. A great guitar player with incredible influences from the full spectrum of players, and was like a historian when it came to guitars and who played what and when. And, in 50s music. And Bob was just a really special guy. And, he wound up, I used to give him the guitar after I finished each one just to test it here in the shop. That was his job here. And, he would just, oh yeah, this is a good one. This one's magic. Yeah, I'll tell I think you should keep this one or something like that. That was, he was a special kind of guy. And then, he played with Lou, but they didn't speak for many, many years. And because of me, somehow, I think they actually wound up back talking to each other and reconnecting. And Bob actually came out with the hidden tapes where he actually used to go to see the Velvet Underground in the 1960s with the actual reel-to-reel on his shoulder. And he put these tapes out, I guess probably 15 years ago. And they're called the Quine tapes. And they're actually Lou Reed's Velvet Underground before they were the Velvet Underground.
Wow.
Yeah. And then when I got to know Lou and build Lou guitars, that was also a very magic time. And that started in the early 70s. I was actually working for Lou, building guitars and fixing his guitars when I was had the shop on Downing Street.
There's a really interesting part in the movie. There was a guitar that was tuned to all the same string. And the story about Lou Reed. Talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, that's Stuart Herwood. That's Lou's guitar tech. And actually, that's what got Lou back into my guitars. He had kind of strayed for a while thinking that the necks were too big. But Stuart actually had bought one of my guitars, one of the all pine ones, and he thought it was pretty magical. And Lou got to playing a little bit, and he was a very ornery cuss, he he just wouldn't accept that, awesome. Until Aaron Bajacom tried out to get in Lou's band, and he came in with a Kelly guitar and auditioned, and he just made that thing sing. And Lou said, all right, you're in the band. And then the next day I got a call, and he had to have two of the Bowery Pines. So, that was pretty magical seeing them come back. In the movie, you see a scene where two guitars, I think there was actually three guitars that I had made for Lou. And he lays them out on the floor, and we took a couple of shots of them. And Stuart's actually been doing these drone exhibitions now where he takes Lou's guitars and puts them sort of in a semicircle and gets them to all feed back.
I've heard about this.
Yeah, it's a magical thing that he gets them to actually balance standing up on their tail ends, and they just vibrate towards each other and somehow hold themselves up.
That is incredible.
It's spooky. It's very spooky. Yeah.
And in that scene, he's like this one guitar is tuned to all the same note.
I never had seen that before or heard of that. And I didn't even know he did it, right? It was just a whole nother way of looking at the guitar. It blew my mind. And that was the first time I ever had heard that.
Yeah.
I never saw Lou do that, but evidently Lou did do that. Quine used to always say Lou had Martian ears. He could hear if something was a little out of tune, and he would give you hell about it, until you tuned it to the way he heard it. And he was usually right. He had that kind of ear where he could hear if things were a little off.
Wow. That's pretty special.
He kind of reminded me of Miles Davis, how he used to give his musicians so much shit if they were, had to really be and had the right beat and then be in tune. And Lou was a lot that way. He was very much that way. A lot better guitarist and musician that he ever got credit for.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think that people would necessarily associate the idea of being like having Martian ears with the type of music that he put out, because he was so raw and honest and almost clumsy in some certain ways in a beautiful way.
Yes. That's musicians for you. That seems to happen time and time again, where you see a musician that, you don't associate them as being the Steve Vai or the Eddie Van Halen or the technical player, but they have this other side to them where the purity and the soul that they can get out of the instrument is just, it's so different and so special.
Yeah. You've been in that shop, like we mentioned, quite a few years, and you've got a couple people in there that have also been in there quite a few years. Number one, your mother, in the shop.
Yeah,
how long has she been there?
Yeah, man, she's 93 now. She'll be 94 on
that's great.
The end of the month here. Yeah, her birthday is the 29th. and she does all the books and keeps the place clean and dusts all the guitars and yells at me still, okay, Mom, all right,
Does she make you lunch?
Yeah, no, she doesn't make us lunch, that's for sure. In fact, I have to buy her soup or whatever she wants. But that's all she gets. She doesn't get a paycheck, so she does it for out of love and being able to do something at her age.
That's
it's
so
great.
special. That's super special. And then you have your assistant, Cindy.
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit
Cindy's
about her.
Yeah, Cindy walked in one day, I guess 7 years ago, and I said, I'll buy young guys, I want to apprentice, and I'll work for free. And you can just sort of tell, and it happened a few times in the early days where they just wanted to build themselves a guitar, and then they're gone. You never see them again. But Cindy had a different approach, and she had an art background, and she really wanted to learn to be a guitar builder. And, being the fact that, I grew up with three sisters, and my mom and my dad was very much, you got to protect your sisters. And I always had a lot more respect for women, I think, than a lot of people do. And so I just, thought that this would work for me. Plus, she was pretty easy to look at. She's a 22-year-old when she came to work here, pretty young thing.
Hey,
Watch it now. Watch it now.
Yeah. So, we'll make this work. She just picked it up so fast, and she's got so much talent that she's actually got her own line of guitars now. And check her Instagram out, Cindy Guitars.
Cindy Guitars. All right.
We'll definitely do that.
Gotta have her on.
Yeah.
Cindy Bono, her artwork and her wood burning, her pyrography, we call it. It's a type of wood burning that she does. But her builds are incredible too. She's actually doing them the same way as I taught her. Yeah, and she uses the same woods. We go out and get wood. She lives over in Flatbush in Brooklyn, and we got wood from over there from a building that she found that was getting torn down. And it's exactly the same wood, which really blew my mind, actually, to think that every borough in New York City is built from this same wood.
Wow.
And then I had realized that New York City has the largest depository of old growth timber in the world right here in all these old buildings. We have so much old growth wood here. And it's just amazing that this stuff is so thrown away. They just throw it in dumpsters and in garbage trucks, and you have to be there that day to get the wood or it's gone.
Jeez.
Who knows where it winds up? Probably in the ocean, and winds up over in Japan somewhere.
Speaking of the ocean, have you ever done any guitars out of the pier wood?
No, I haven't done any guitars out of pier wood before, but I've tried lots of different. I know Fender was making wood from the Hollywood Bowl. They had some seats or something that they were making chairs, and I thought that was interesting. And I just got approached by City Winery. We have a City Winery here, which is an incredible club. It's been really successful, and they have all the major bands play there. And they just lost the rights to the building. They're going to be tearing the building down. Walt Disney bought the ground, and they're going to build some monster ugly thing there. Of course. But they came in and had just heard about me and saw a little clip on the trailer of the movie, and they said, could you make a guitar for us out of the stage? And I said, oh, that's wonderful. Of course, this will be great, because they're opening up a new City Winery uptown. And so that guitar will be in there for guitarists to play, and it'll be made from the stage from the old City Winery.
When I was watching the movie, I felt my blood pressure kind of like rise a little bit, at least twice, because you were just talking about the building, and there were a couple instances in the movie where, hey, the building next door is being sold, and I was like, oh no, where's this going?
Oh, yeah. And that wasn't staged. That actually happened. There happened during the filming, the sign went up on the building next to us that was for sale.
Right.
And these three houses here, these three buildings, this one and the two next to it, are from the 1820s. They're the oldest on the block. They have the peak roofs and the little dormers up there. Mm-hmm. And that one came up for sale, and real estate agent, and he did come in, and that whole attitude I took towards him, I guess, when he was snooping around looking for square footage and stuff in this place, it was all real. That was in the movie. It was a real thing. But I'm fortunate to have a great landlady who owns this building and lives upstairs, and she raised her daughter here and wants to pass the building on to her in the future. And they've been in here, the Angeles family, for 5 generations in this building. So they want to keep it intact and keep it going. And she's pretty laid back, and she's kind of my age, and we get along really good. We've been friends for 30 years now. And
Boy, you
like
lucked
that.
out there.
Yeah, I sure did.
I mean, I was getting nervous when I saw that when it cuts to the guy standing there. I'm like, he
Yeah.
doesn't look like a guy who's supposed to be in that shop. What's about to happen right now?
Yeah,
Oh no!
it was so real, and that was exactly what happened. And Ryan just happened to be there with the camera, and that was all filmed, and it was pretty much the way it happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's in the future for you right now? I mean, you just is it the
I'm
same old
usually
thing?
about a
or-
year. Yeah, I'm usually about a year back ordered on guitars. So I'm just, coming to work. I get in around 8:30 every morning, between 8 and 8:30, and I'm here till at least 6 in the evening. And I'm getting old too, but I just really love what I do. It's not work for me, and I get to get out of the city. I'm a big cyclist, and I love cycling. So I get out of the city each week. I ride about 100 miles up to upstate New York, and get up into the country and breathe some clean air and try to clean my lungs out.
Wow.
And so, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
That's outstanding. So the movie's coming out, and everybody will be able to see it. I'm sure there's going to be quite a buzz and fanfare in the guitar world when that does release, and we'll do what we
I
can
hope so.
to add to
there
that.
isn't many guitar movies, that I've ever really seen. Now, maybe there are, but I just was amazed that while this movie was being filmed, I kept going, why would anybody want to see a movie about me? I just didn't get it. But Ron did such a magical job on really creating the village, the Greenwich Village scene, and the gentrification idea of what's been changing. And the walking in these doors is really like going back in time. You do kind of fall back into this space where it's just like it was in the 1930s, and the building, because it's from 1820s, has that feel about it. The old tin ceiling and the yellow pine floors, and it's smell of sawdust in the air. People are just so happy when they come in here. And speaking about blood pressure, I think the film will lower your blood pressure a little bit.
That's a great point, because when Tony and I were talking about this, and Jared, we were all kind of like, that. It kind of made me feel like, when I was talking about restringing my guitars downstairs in my basement, it felt like that. There's just this pace.
Therapeutic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, right?
Yeah, it's great.
And then to hear your instrument with new strings on it, nice fresh strings, and you just want you to play some more new tunes. And strings are great that they do rusty and need to be changed. I love that part of the guitar where you can change the strings and all of a sudden it comes a little more alive again.
Yeah. You mentioned something that, we kind of hit on earlier, which is when people come in and they do make that connection with one of your instruments. And I think that's what the film does such a great job of, because it's not another film about like, let's just look at the craft. Show us the craft. It's the connection. It's the person walking in who has no idea what they're about to put in their hands that can change their life. And I thought that was a really neat
community thing too.
Yeah,
the community part of it. Mark Rebo is talking about how all the kind of clubs are disappearing, and it's nice to have a place that you can just guitar. And it's kind of, Ron always says, it's kind of like a post office. People will leave messages, and they'll leave books for Jim Jarmusch or something, knowing that he'll eventually be back in here and he'll have these things waiting for him. So it's kind of that way as well.
Well, Rick, we sure do appreciate your time. This has been a real treat for us to talk to you about your love of making guitars and the history behind them. And we encourage everyone to go out and see. Would you just remind everybody the name of the movie?
Yeah, it's called Carmine St Guitars, and it's premiering here at the Film Forum, and I think it's going to be in at least 85 cities in the U.S., and it's been going to every film festival, and people have been coming in from Reykjavik, Ireland. Today there was 2 people from Austria.
Wow.
People all over the world have seen it, and it's a magical thing for me to see that happen in my lifetime, and it's great. I hope everybody goes to see it. You'll definitely won't be disappointed. Ron did an incredible job, and Jimmy's, and it's just a fun movie.
That's fantastic. Well, we just got a few things that we're going to take care of, and then we're going to let you go. One of our favorite segments on our show is called
Would You Rather? Today's Would You Rather.
That's abbreviated.
All right, yes, that's right. Cut into the chase.
Today's Would You Rather. So you're going to have a guitar made out of some special wood, and you have 2 choices.
Is Rick going to build the guitar?
I think he is.
Okay.
He definitely is.
And he may even want this guitar.
And he's got
For
2.
himself.
So for this build, for you, he's got 2 very special pieces of wood, in which one piece of wood is from the Yankee Stadium.
Whoa.
The bench.
That's right. The bench.
From the
that
dugout.
where the guys sit on the bench and stuff.
The bench warmers.
Where the
I
guys
can see
spit
it now.
their spit juice on it.
Yes.
Or would you rather have a guitar made from the famous ride Cyclone from the Coney Island?
Coney Island.
Yes.
Ah.
All right.
That
Now,
would be a hard choice.
well, you think about that for a second. We're going to let your pipes take a rest. We're going to ask Tony, go.
Well, I've always been more of a Dodgers fan, so Brooklyn Dodgers, baby.
From the old days, huh?
Yeah, I'm a Mets fan now, so
There you go.
I relate to you.
So, and I do like roller coasters, so I'm going with the Cyclone.
That's cool.
That's
I like
it.
that.
And I think it'll play faster too.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
I think so.
just for everybody that doesn't know what a cyclone is, Rick, you can tell them about the
for
cyclone.
sure.
Tell them about the
Yeah.
cyclone.
Well, I went on the Cyclone. I think I was 5 years old. My grandfather took me there, and we also went on they didn't have them for many years after, but I think I was one of the last rides on the steeplechase, which actually were these horses that were on tracks, and you would go around and grab a little. And I was sitting in front of my grandfather, and I didn't know what the heck he was reaching for. But then I realized there were these little metal rings which would give you a free ride.
Brass ring.
Yeah, brass rings. But you never forget the Cyclone. It was the scariest thing for many, many years until you were a teenager. And then all you wanted to do was go back on the Cyclone when you were a teenager.
And that was a big that was one of the first wooden roller coasters in the country, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then the parachute jump, I actually remember being a teenager and having penny loafers. And when you hit the bottom of the parachute jump, it would be on these big springs. And I actually lost my loafers when I hit the bottom.
Oh, funny.
Never forgot that.
Oh my god.
Well, since you're reminiscing down memory lane, which guitar are you going to choose? The Yankees bench or the Cyclone?
Oh, Cyclone for sure. I'm a big Coney Island fan. If you ever read or saw the PBS special about Coney Island, and back in the Sigmund Freud would go there and analyze people because, women weren't allowed to wear bathing suits. They had to wear things that covered their ankles and everything at the time. This is 1910 when Coney Island, they had 3 major parks there. And Luna Park was so lit up that you could see it 20 miles out to sea.
Wow.
They had elephants that lived there. They had 150 midgets that lived there. It was just an incredible, and still is to this day. It's all run down and beat up, but it's trying to make a comeback. But I have such fond memories of Coney Island and the old wooden slide and the roulette wheel that would throw you out, and so many dangerous things that you would never have them anymore. It was a great amusement park and still is.
And who was watching? You cut out just a little bit. Who would be doing that?
Who would be doing what?
You said that. I think you said Sigmund.
Oh, Sigmund Freud, would actually go to, I think I heard Darwin actually too, maybe even they would go to a commercial place where people could really let their hair down. And they weren't intimidated, by being the prudish society that the culture wanted you to be at that time. So it was really a place to open up, and people were different. And there was, New York City has everything from the Irish, the Italians, the Jews. We have everybody, the Polacks. I mean, everybody lives here and did live here then. It was a real melting pot, and Coney Island was the place to go.
So, Jared, how about you?
I'm a huge baseball fan. By default, since I married my wife, I'm a Cleveland Tribe fan.
Uh-huh.
Yep. I'll say it, Cleveland Indians.
Cleveland Tribe, yes. I know that's a controversial point.
It is. But anyway, I love that team. So since I'm a big baseball fan, I will go with the Yankee Stadium bench. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not a big Yankee fan, but yeah, give me a piece of that bench. I'll play it.
Yeah. I think I'll go for the bench too, because just growing up as a kid and reading so many books on the old Yankees and everything. I grew up on the West Coast, so that was that was just like a mythical.
No, the Dodgers
thing.
followed you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. We lost our Dodgers.
Yeah. So Tony, once you got a couple. You got to thank you for us.
I have a story about the Dodgers. Do you know how they got their name?
Oh, I don't.
I just heard this on NPR this weekend. So they got their name from when electric streetcars were first introduced in Brooklyn, and people did not, they were used to horse-drawn carriages, and the horses would stop.
Yeah.
The horses would stop when a person crossed the tracks or whatever.
But the trains
the trains did. People had to dodge the trains.
They were dodging. That's incredible. There's a great 1906, actually. It was right before the San Francisco earthquake. It was like a week before, they say, and there's a film that somebody made. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. In fact, I did find it on YouTube, where one of the trolley cars is going from one side of the city to the other, and you see everybody running in front of the trolley car and getting out of the way, and all the old buildings. And to think that 2 days later, the city collapsed with this giant earthquake and the fires burned it to the ground. It's just an incredible video.
Yeah. Man, oh man, this is, I'm just, I feel like it's fireside chat with Rick Kelly. It's fantastic.
Well, anyhow, at this point in the show, there's a special group of people we like to thank. They are our executive producers, and they've gone over to patreon.com/the Guitar Knobs and found out how they could become executive producers.
That's right.
Yep.
And for a very small amount of donation, they get a great prize package. They get T-shirts and barefoot buttons and picks and stickers and
Fun stuff.
all kinds of things. But even more importantly, Jared, what happens?
They get their name right on the thing.
And that is what I'm going to do right now.
Bada boom.
Thank you very much to the following executive producers, starting with Tom Barazin, Martin Cliff, John Daly, Sean S., Chris Kearney, Darren Gregory, Doug Christ, Michael Van Zant, Brad Partridge, Corey Nigro, Ken Sayers, Jonathan Jerusik, Brian Robison, Michael Senchuk, Michael McVeigh, Rick Langlu, Stefan Lam, Johnny Knowles, Anthony Lathrop, John Anglin, Tyler Bray, Tig Harmon, Christopher Heidel, and John Esterly.
Hey, thank you guys so much for helping to contribute to our show, for keeping our lights on and the internet barely working. And we are just so grateful for your listenership and for people dropping lines and letting us know that we're doing a good job or things that we can improve on. Man, oh man. Rick, it's killing us because we all want to just give you a big handshake and a big hug right now. This is such a great time talking to you. And huge congratulations on the movie and the success of your shop and the long run of your love of building guitars.
Oh, thank you, man, so much, and thanks for having me. Just one extra thing, I do have these special knobs on my guitars that are handmade with a really high dome on them, and they come all only on this guitar. You'll never see another guitar knob like that.
Interesting.
Wow.
Well, you'll never see other guitar knobs like us either.
Yes.
So.
We're three very unique knobs.
I'm gonna go check this shop out one of these.
Oh yeah, we got to do it.
Did you ever hear of Knobbies? Did you ever see those knobs? That was a short-lived company that made rubber knobs, and they were awesome. I used to love those knobs. They're called Knobbies.
I don't remember those.
Yeah, knob, Knobese, like they were easy to use. And they really did have a nice grip to them. I don't know what kind of rubber they used, but I think they're still in business, but you have to buy a huge amount of them to get to be a dealer. And I just haven't, done that, but they were always one of my favorite knobs too.
Oh, what a trip. All right, gentlemen, where can we find each other? Rick, where can people find you?
Carmine Street Guitars is located in New York City in Greenwich Village at 42 Carmine Street. And it's 42 Carmine Street, New York, 10014-212-691-8400 is the phone number. Come visit.
All right. That's a lot of math. Hopefully everybody remembers that. Tony, how about yourself?
If you need custom pickguard work, put in different pickups, whatever you want to do, go over to pickguardian.com. And then you can also check out some of the projects I'm working on Instagram at pickguardian and the number 1. And there's always some things on Facebook too.
And
they make great pickguards.
Thank you.
If you need pickups, go to Jared at BrandonWilmPickups.com to drop me a line and check out my website, Brandon Wilm Pickups, if you need some old-looking new pickups or
Nice.
new pickups, give me a call. I
There you
can make
go.
your dreams come true.
You can send me a note, Todd at theguitarknobs.com, or DM me on Instagram. We would love to hear what you think about the show. Share us your would you rathers, and we're getting quite a fun list of them. We got some real good ones coming up. Huge thank you to Rick Kelly for sharing his time, and please go see the movie if you love guitars, which you're obviously listening to our show, so you're going to love this movie. So thank you so much, Rick, for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And have a great guitar week, everybody, and subscribe!
Yeah.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/theguitarknobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.